Howdy, historians. Mr. Montgomery here, bringing you the last part for Unit 2, Part 3, Flip Lessons about Imperial Policy and Control. So we've been seeing a lot of good things already. We checked out Imperial Control and Mercantilism in our first section. We checked out Imperial Control of the Glorious Revolution and Political Systems in Part 2. And now we are going into the last part, the Seeds of Liberty, for all of you following along with your lecture outline. Get a little bit more detailed outline on your flip handout sheet. So let's go ahead and see how all of these things come together and get us steps closer to the American Revolution. You know the reminders: check the vocab, take the notes, use the functionality, answer the questions at the end. So we've already been there, we've been there. Let's hop into our Seeds of Liberty. So, we first need to start with a couple common characteristics of colonial governments and some of the foundations of colonial governments. So we talked in the last section about some of the common characteristics, our principles of toleration, education, all the freedoms of economic opportunity, speech, press, assembly, voting, representative governments, all that stuff. I want to add a few other ideas here to make us understand how these seeds of liberty are being planted. Now, colonial governments. We need to go way back here to understand something about them. They really get their start and they get their basis from the Magna Carta. The Magna Carta passed in 1215. This is U.S. history, so you don't need to go into a ton of detail about it. But basically, it was the first written constitution in Europe. It was the basis for English common law, and the number one thing that it established was freedom from oppression, limited some of the powers of the king, and was the basis for the rights of Englishmen. And what the whole American Revolution is going to be fought over are the rights of Englishmen. So we've got to understand where those started. They started with the Magna Carta in 1215. In this unit, we've also talked about the Mayflower Compact, signed by the settlers of Pilgrim before they come ashore, or the Pilgrims who settled Plymouth Bay Colony before they came ashore. They basically decide that they're going to have a representative government and that they're going to make their own decisions. It's the first of many constitutions that are going to be established in the colonies that, again, are going to help lay the foundation for self-government and independence of the colonies in the creation of the United States of America. We've talked about charters and how every colonial charter guaranteed that you would have the traditional rights of Englishmen in the colonies, and the promise that you would have these traditional rights of Englishmen would be the foundation for our rights in the United States and a big cause of the American Revolution. We've also seen how important voting is in the colonies and the establishment of two house legislative bodies like the House of Burgesses, and all the different ways that the colonists found ways to assert their independence and power, whether it was fighting against economic mercantilism or withholding the salary of governors. The colonists were always trying to assert their independence, assert their power, show that they were equal to Englishmen, and show that they deserved respect and that their rights would not be violated one way or the other. And let's not forget about the law of proximity. It allows them to become American, it allows them to become unique and individual, and it allows them to fight against the economic policy of mercantilism, to fight against royal control, and to have them really assert their ideas of independence across the entire societal spectrum. And that's where we're really starting to get closer and closer to this resistance. They're becoming different, they're becoming American, and their colonial governments, their colonial economies, their colonial religions, their colonial educational system, all of it was different, and those are huge seeds of liberty, the creation of an American identity. Now, the Enlightenment is the last big thing that we need to look at here. The key concept to the Enlightenment was rationalism. And rationalism really, it's the belief that human reason was adequate to solve all of mankind's problems. Now, some people, this really freaked them out because God wasn't seen as a central active force in the universe. But at the heart of the Enlightenment was this idea that reason can win, that if we sit around and think about things long enough, we have the power within us to create perfect systems, to solve problems, that it's not all just the will of God, it's not just the whims of our benevolent creator that determine our lives. We can create the best political systems, we can create the best economic systems, and if things are broke, we can fix them. One of the most well-known Enlightenment thinkers is John Locke. Here's a picture of John. He's going to be incredibly important in the colonies and eventually for the United States of America. His writings greatly influenced the colonists. He was the first to coin the phrase life, liberty, and property. We'll, of course, change that to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And he was big about people obtaining and then sustaining their natural rights. And he had this idea called the social contract. Now, the heart of the social contract is trying to find a government that will both help you obtain and then sustain rights. Now, a big part of the social contract, it goes like this. It's a government's duty to protect the rights of its citizens. When that government does not protect the rights of its citizens, it then becomes the duty of the citizens to overthrow that government and replace it with one that will. Now, you can already see how dangerous this idea is to European monarchs. Again, it's the duty of governments to protect the rights of citizens. If a government does not protect the rights of citizens, it is the duty of those citizens to overthrow the government and replace it with one that will. That's the American Revolution in a nutshell. Eventually, what we've seen throughout this whole unit is that the colonists have this idea that they have rights, they have economic opportunity, they have these freedoms of speech and press and assembly. They have the right to govern themselves. The period of statutory neglect helps reinforce all these ideas, and then Locke comes around and says, hey, if your rights are violated, you've got to do something about it. You've got to create a government that is going to both maintain and sustain your rights. So when suddenly things change at the end of the French and Indian War, that's when the ideas of John Locke are going to become so important and so monumental and revolutionary, because as the colonists feel their rights are being denied or their rights are being mistreated in any way, they're going to go back to this social contract theory that they need a government that's going to protect and maintain their rights. So Locke is very important, and he's going to be very influential in the American Revolution, and lots of the ideas found in our Constitution are going to come from Locke. So a huge seed of liberty planted there. And as we wrap up the struggle for power in North America, what we really see throughout Section 3 of Unit 2 is a growing feeling of independence from the colonists. They have fought wars. They have won battles. They have found resources and turned them into trade commodities as they start to push further west and gain more land. Tensions with the mother country are present at every single turn. Whether it's politics or economics, there are tensions there that are deep-rooted and deeply seated and that are going to flare up and grow when suddenly the events of the imperial crisis and the causes of the revolution begin. We saw the development of the transatlantic economy and the triangular trade and how that increased feelings of independence. We saw an increased growing, ever increasing and growing colonial identity, the Great Awakening, the first mass movement in American history, educational systems developing, political systems developing, pushes tension over the crown pushing for control over economic and political systems, the impact of the Glorious Revolution, the impact of the Enlightenment. You know, what's really happening here is the colonists have this identity that's growing. They have feelings of disrespect. They feel like they're being held in economic infancy. They feel like they're being held back. But the king is so far away. The law of proximity comes back and time again. They feel they have these rights, and there's all these tensions boiling up. The colonists feel like they've won the struggle for power in North America. They've defeated the French. They've defeated the Spanish. They've defeated the natives. They've set up good political and economic systems. And when suddenly the crown is going to try to take control back, that's when the revolution is really going to begin. That's when things are going to get wild. That's when the course of world history is going to be changed forever. And that's what we've seen throughout the unit, is that this struggle for power is very multi-layered. The colonists have become different. They've become themselves. They've grown in their identity. They've conquered the Atlantic seaboard. They've established their societies, and they're ready to gain their independence. The powder keg is there. Now what we need is the spark. And the spark is going to come at the end of the French and Indian War in 1763. The period of salutary neglect is going to end. And like I said before, the course of world history is going to be changed forever. So really cool things coming up here that we're going to see. Now, remember, for this lesson, finish the vocab. Make sure you have a good understanding of it. Finish the post-lesson questions. If you have any questions, be sure to take note of them so that they can be addressed during class. bring all these materials. Bring your notes, bring the sheet, bring all that good stuff. You guys have been awesome. Thanks for hanging with me. I hope you're enjoying the flip lessons. We'll do a few more. They get a little more visually appealing as we go, a little more fancy. So enjoy. Make sure you write down your questions, and I'll see you next time. I'm out of here, historians.